Hi, Felix. Thank you for coming in to do this episode with us. You are the project manager at Green Hub East Africa.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your education. I want to understand. You look really, I expected.
Expect me to be older?
Yes. Tell me about your education background, how you got into this field of work.
Thank you. Sorry to disappoint you, but it's a compliment for me. Yeah, so I've been in the electric mobility space first in Kenya since 2016. So my education background is I'm a mechatronics engineer. So
What?
graduated with a degree in mechatronics engineering, specifically automotive option. Okay,
Felix, say that again.
a degree, a bachelor's in mechatronics engineering.
What's mechatronics engineering?
So mechatronics engineering, it's more like a blend of mechanical, electrical, and computers. So basically the future of where we are going. So think about industries, right? You have conveyor belts, you have all these processes that are running. So that the person who does that, typically we call them either a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer. But now we have that hybrid version that's called a mechatronics engineer.
I'm worried about whether I am in the future. I don't know if I'll have a place. All right. So mechatronics engineering.
Yeah. It's relatively new, even in Kenya. So in Kenya, we have it in two universities, two big universities. I went to one that's Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. So I joined there in 2014 and left in 2019. Okay. So how I got into electric mobility, ever since I was a kid, I was always interested in like vehicles, how you see cars on the road. My dad didn't have a car, so I always wish he did. I had uncles who had vehicles, and I was always fascinated. Okay, so I came into the industry from a pure point of fascination with vehicles. So I know I sound like a typical boy.
What's fascinating about vehicles?
Getting to understand how they work, because sometimes we'd go and the vehicle runs out of petrol and you're like, what is petrol and how does that petrol work? They tell you petrol burns in the engine and you're like, I've never seen a fire. When I see a fire in an engine, it's probably a bad thing. So how does everything work? So I started off in the vehicles, looking at petrol, diesel engines when I was just a boy. And then understanding why like a motorcycle is much louder than a car. So things like that, things that people say are dorky, but I found them interesting. Then I went to high school. In high school, I took a course that was one of the subjects was called power mechanics. And for that one, now we got to understand the car engine, how an engine works. It was really fascinating for me. So when I was going to university, it just felt like the next step. Then I get to university in 2014. And then in the world, now we started talking about, there's this guy who's called Elon Musk. And then we're talking about climate. So now I started looking at it from what's the future of this? And how can I like strategically position myself to take advantage of this? And how can we, like as a country, as a community and as a continent, how can we take advantage of this? Because there's something that happened. I'm young enough, or I'm old enough to remember a time when we used to go to a station like a phone booth to make a call. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember that, like my dad holding my hand, to make a long distance call. So we'd use a phone booth. You enter some coins and you make a call. Then suddenly everyone had. Then we moved now to the phones, to the cell phones, where you could carry it. Now that one is the one I remember more. So that other one was a bit too young. I only remember it in bits, not as a common occurrence. So that interested me, how we went from one technology and we moved to the other, and suddenly everything else became obsolete. Like those payphones, you don't see a booth. I haven't seen a booth anywhere. Maybe in a museum for.
When I see one, I take a picture with it. There's one on one of these islands.
It's that
red. Yeah. I get excited.
Yeah. Some boost of nostalgia, yes. But that jump from that technology to this new one, that's what told me that every once in a while, you come from one technology and then you leapfrog to another, okay? Then I've also, in my school, I love everything physics. So we also started looking at electricity, how electricity works, because we were among the first people to have electricity in my village. So I was quite excited to brag about my friends. Then they're like, how does it work? Can you tell them it's like fire? So you're just a boy. So electricity as well, the generation, and then going to like understanding how electricity works, how it's generated, and how it's used. Okay. So and then started the same thing I'd heard about vehicles also came into that, where they were like energy, the electricity that we're using, some of it is causing pollution. It's dirty, and you try to understand why that is the case. For the cars, it made sense, because even in my village, when you're using like firewood and it's not like well dried, there's a lot of smoke and you choke. So if you put that, if you extrapolate that to the globe, it actually makes sense. So if you're burning too much of carbon, CO2, producing too much carbon-based fuels, it means the level of CO2 will increase, and therefore some of the things you're seeing in terms of changes in the climate actually make sense from that point of view. Okay, so there's evidence for that, and you can actually show an experiment with that. So along those lines, now I was like, here there is an opportunity. Number one, in renewable energy, and number two, how to make vehicles cleaner.
So before you tell me, did you ever take a vehicle home?
Yes.
What was that like?
Oh my goodness, it was nice.
Tell me about the nice.
Yeah. So I remember the first time there was actually a vehicle I remember about. It was J200 Toyota Prado, and it was parked at home. So one of you are one of the rich relatives who comes to visit you.
The rich uncle.
Yeah. No, it's the
auntie.
rich auntie. Yeah.
Auntie.
Yeah, the rich auntie.
Yes.
So she parked it outside, and then me and my friends were like, oh my goodness, that vehicle is beautiful and such. We didn't know it had an alarm, so we tried like opening the door, and it went out, and we all scattered around. But then when she came back, she was like, yeah, it has an alarm. Do you want to go for a ride? And of course, being a boy, like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, so it was quite exciting. And because I was like 4 or 5, yeah, I'd been in a vehicle before, but this one now in the front seat and being explained what is actually going on, and seeing somebody drive, someone that I know drive. So it's quite fascinating.
Have you taken a vehicle home?
Yeah, I have. Now, it's been like 20-something years. So
the first time you took it home?
Yeah, the first time.
Because you said your dad didn't have a vehicle.
Yeah, my dad didn't have a vehicle. That is true. The first time I drove a vehicle home was when I was first employed. Okay, so when I was first employed, I was given a company car, and it was an electric car actually. So it was a double excitement. People have now, no one in that area had ever come with an electric vehicle home, and for me personally, to drive this vehicle home with my own license and showing even my dad and telling him, this is the future, unlike the vehicles you're used to, this one doesn't have an engine. And then the next day, everyone within my our homestead is like, yeah, I heard you came with a vehicle that doesn't have an engine. And then I'm charging it there from one of the sockets in my house. So it was quite fascinating and exciting for me. I think I was 20 or 21 at the time. So yeah, so it was at the peak of, you can call it peak happiness and excitement, at least.
Do you ride a motorbike?
Yeah, I have one right now.
Is that how you came?
Yeah, that's how I came.
It's downstairs?
It's downstairs,
somewhere.
Yeah.
An electric motorbike?
An electric motorcycle.
What is it like riding in Kampala?
It requires, I have to say, I'm coming from Nairobi, so I thought I have all the experience I needed. Yeah, but I came to Kampala, and the number of motorcycles is just, as a proportion to the population, I think within Kampala is just higher than in Nairobi. Because in Nairobi, you don't get motorcycles within the city center, at least a very limited number of those. And then here it's like the main mode of transport if you want to get somewhere fast. So there are just so many of them. So initially, before you get used to it, it's a bit intimidating because I'm at a stoplight, I've stopped, and everyone behind me, the motorcycle, is just hooting and telling me to move out there because they don't know I don't understand. Some of Uganda and now I'm like English, and they're like, move. Like, but there's a red light, you know? Yeah, so there's that. It's a bit scary when you get here. But soon enough, I think you get used to it. You get used to it as long as you understand how things are moving. It took me about a month or two just to get used to it. Yeah, but it's pretty hectic. You see people without helmets. You also see someone carrying up to 4 people. So, yeah, okay, there's always something new to observe. Yeah.
You kept saying your village, and I know I didn't ask you about it.
Yeah.
But then I'm sure some listener is going to be saying, where is his village? Where is he from?
Oh.
So where are you from?
Yes, so I'm from Kenya. I'm Kenyan national, born and raised in Kenya. So I was born in a village in Kiambu County. The name of the exact village is Ikino Village in Kiambu. Okay, so you just put that on a map or Google Earth, you can probably see the village out there. Yeah.
Surprisingly, actually, okay, but don't ask me questions. What keeps you awake at night when you're thinking about this work that you engaged in that you clearly seem very passionate about?
Yeah, so I think that one I can address it on two fronts. Number one, like I said, initially I was very interested in vehicles, right? Then transitioned to electric vehicles. And the more I've been in the industry and the more I've done some of my research, I came to the conclusion that the cost barrier is the biggest thing that is going to keep us from getting to where we need. I realized that first when I looked at the number of vehicles that are currently being assembled in Kenya and even in Uganda. When you look at locally assembled vehicles, it's such a small amount of them. Then once I looked at that, now I thought about, okay, what do we sell in bigger numbers? It's motorcycles. So that's now how I gravitated from the electric 4-wheelers to the electric 2-wheelers. It's a much bigger market. But even in that very market, you have the cost element. Batteries are really expensive, okay? So a typical battery that will do 100 kilometers costs almost as much as a motorcycle itself. Yes, so getting ways of making the product as affordable to the rider as you possibly can, because at the end of the day, you might preach to them, hey, here's an electric motorcycle.
Cleaner option.
No noise, no vibration. But if you're going to ask them for two times the cost, ultimately, and someone who's driving in a motorcycle, every shilling counts. Okay, so even a difference of just, let's say, $500 between the price of buying an ICE and buying an EV, that difference would make them go to the regular petrol boda. So
you said ICE, that's sorry. Regular petrol boda?
Yeah, that's a regular petrol boda. And that jump, that cost delta is what everyone is trying to work on.
Felix, I'm afraid to ask this question, but let me just ask it.
Yes.
How much is an electric?
An electric motorcycle. So that answer is a bit long. It's just like a car. So it depends with what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So how I'll answer this, I'll answer it number one as how we do it at Green Hub, and also perhaps talk about some of the competition and options that are out there. So there are two ways of selling an electric motorcycle. You can go one way. I sell you the bike and the battery with a charger. That's how Green Hub we do it. I sell you the bike with a battery and a charger. You can charge at home. You can charge at our charging stations. That's the Green Hub way of doing it. The problem with that is the bike is expensive. The bike ends up costing about $2,000 to $2,500, which is about $8 million all the way to around $12 million. So the average boda-boda rider who's used to paying $5 million, $6 million for a bike looks
or even less.
Yeah, or even less. Now I'm talking about a new unit for now. Okay. Yeah. So they look at that and it becomes prohibitively expensive. So the second way of selling it is taking out the most expensive component and leasing it out for a cost that is lower than what you'd pay for petrol. So when you look at other companies you've heard of, I'm not sure how well you know the companies that are doing electric in Uganda.
Not at all.
Yes, in Uganda, in Kenya, you have someone like Zembo. Take Zembo for example. They'll sell you the bike, the electric motorcycle for let's say $5 million. Okay. Then they'll give you the option of leasing the battery, where you pay a lease daily, which should be less than how much you'd have spent on fuel. So therefore, it becomes affordable for the average rider. Because if they pay $5 million for the bike, and then they'll be paying, because the same thing they do on their petrol bikes, they'll be doing on the electric. It's an analogy of your gas. You see that gas cylinder. It's in your house, but technically it's the gas that is inside that is actually yours. The cylinder itself, once it's empty, you go exchange it at your regular petrol station or your gas cylinder distributor. Same thing with this case of the battery, where you're using the energy inside the battery. Once it is depleted, you go to a swapping station, and you swap that battery.
Convince me, Felix, to buy an electric motorcycle. Me in Uganda.
Yes.
Why should I buy it?
Okay, when you come to me taking an electric motorcycle, the thing you realize is just the savings. Okay, so I'm going to have a talk with you. Let's think about this. If you had a petrol boda-boda, okay, the most common one, a 100cc, and let's be generous and say it consumes 1 liter. For every 1 liter, it goes 50 kilometers. If you do that math, it means for every 1 kilometer, you'll be spending 100 shillings. Okay, 100 shillings for every kilometer on petrol. That's number one.
These are 100 Uganda shillings.
These are 100 Ugandan shillings for every kilometer. So that's easy. Where you typically check how many kilometers you travel in a day. You just multiply it by 100. It gives you the amount you spend on fuel. Of course, it varies, but that's just a base point. So assuming you're doing 100 kilometers every day, so on fuel, that will be 10,000. If I sell you an electric bike, if I sell you an electric motorcycle, number one, the cost per kilometer, when you compare with that, when you do the same math, how much you would pay to Umeme to access the electricity, it's about 29 shillings. So you'll be spending 29 shillings for every kilometer. Now you take 29, you multiply by 100, okay? So the same distance that you'd have used 10,000 on your electric, on your petrol bike, you'll be using almost 3,000. So it's a savings of almost 70%. That is number one. That is a savings. That is the biggest advantage that anyone switching from an ICE will see on day one. That's a saving you'll see on day one. Number two, the maintenance cost. Regular boda-boda riders, they have to do a lot of maintenance on the bike. Since it's burning fuel, you have to check things such as your clutch, it's there. You need to check on your spark plugs. You need to buy oil almost every month because it's also, as the bike ages, it gets even worse. Now, for the electric bike, there aren't that many moving parts. So the spending on maintenance, it's negligible. Yeah, so that's number two. Those are the two biggest selling points when it comes to cost. Number three is the freedom you get. Now imagine this, and this is something you get from our riders. The convenience and the knowledge and the freedom of knowing you'd never have to visit a petrol station again. Okay? As long as you have electricity at your home, or as long as you have somewhere you can access a charger.
When we have a fuel shortage,
yes,
I'm safe.
Yeah, exactly. When there's a fuel shortage, you are safe. And the fact that not only is it cheaper, but it also gives you that you'll be passing petrol stations while smiling.
How many boda-boda riders have you convinced?
So far, I'll speak of we are supply constrained as of now. So right now we have about 40 riders. Okay, this is 2025, and we need to speak more about Green Hub and what Green Hub is.
I'm coming to Green Hub.
Yes. So we have about 40, but we have a backlog of people who want to make their orders. But unfortunately, we don't have bikes we can sell right now.
Are these boda-boda riders?
Yes.
Or
yes.
just not boda-boda riders?
Yeah, I think you'll see the bigger picture as we talk about Green Hub itself.
All right, Let's talk about Green Hub. The thing is, you first of all, you started off by telling me my episodes are too short and you prefer them to be longer. Now yours is going to be really long. So Green Hub, when was it established? What inspired its establishment? First answer those two, and then I'm very curious to know how it contributes to combating climate change. Yeah, so Green Hub is the brainchild of two companies, two top-level companies in Uganda, and the executive team. So we have Motorcare and Kia Group in Uganda. So Kia Group owns Motorcare in Uganda, and they are the distributors of Nissan, Ford, and Hyundai vehicles.
So their vehicle, their dealership basically. And we have Nexus Green, a renewable energy company. It's actually the biggest EPC in Uganda right now.
What's EPC?
Okay, it's let me just call it an energy company,
Okay.
construction company. So it's the biggest in Uganda, and it's top 2 in East Africa. So it's really huge, and it's expanding. So those two companies, number one is very experienced in energy. The other one is very experienced in vehicles. So they exist this midpoint where they each can share. He'll deal everything with energy and charging stations. He'll deal everything with vehicles, repairs, supplies, and management, everything. So it's the perfect marriage,
Yeah,
basically.
it sounds like it.
Yeah. And then it was established in 2023. Okay, so 2023, relatively new company, and only started operating in 2024, January. And then we launched our first bikes in May 2024.
Where did you launch them?
So we launched them. We had a launch at Safe Border,
Okay.
that first launch. And ever since, we've had 2 more launches, one at Nexus Green and the other one at Ford Motor Care.
So what inspired all of this?
What inspired this is, number one, the whole looking at the climate issue. So, number one, the vehicles that we have currently, they are sky blue. And the vision for the company is clear skies in Kampala. So, our first vision is to ensure that, number one, the polluting petrol vehicles, we want to get to a point where we never see those ones again, the petrol bikes, okay? But we want to do it in a sustainable way. So if you see a blue scooter out there, just know that is one of the things that is contributing towards, and that is why it's blue. It looks just like the sky. We envision a time when the skies in Kampala will just be blue. I don't know if you remember the time of the pandemic, and it was a bit silent.
Clean.
It was so clean.
Yeah.
Imagine having that every day. So
I think that there's a time when we had a lot of people on social media talking about there was a gray sky. It felt like there was, so much dust in the air, or
Yes.
people were confused about what that was. So that's what you're making me think about.
Yeah. So that's what we are. And just below that gray sky, just above that gray sky, is a beautiful blue sky, right? So we just need to get rid of that smog and dust. And Green Hub is we are looking into doing that one step at a time. So that's what inspired the company. And then number 2, the 2 companies, the expertise each has in their own area, looking at how they can leverage that expertise to grow a different kind of industry and to grow a different kind of product. So when you just look at the number of motorcycles that are sold, like just in Kampala alone, in Uganda, it's about 90,000, right? So those are very big numbers when you compare to the number of vehicles and the number of how much business you can generate, for example, for solar. So there's also the opportunity for doing business, okay? So pouring the right amount of investment while looking at the return and also the effect to the community, that is what inspires the whole debate about Green Hub. Then Green Hub, the company, that's what it's about, but there is also a consortium. So this consortium is made of different companies, and we have a wide variety of companies that we work with and partners. So we have partnered with Total Energies, and they have allowed us to install charging points. Yeah,
I think I've seen those.
Yeah. So just down the road at Total Wampeo, you'll see here there, it's branded Green Hub. Then we have MTN. So MTN is also part of the Green Hub consortium, and for them, they've enabled our riders to get access to mobile phones, for example. We have data, for example, that is under MTN, and also the payment platform. All that is provided by MTN. And then we have Centenary Bank, one of our biggest partners as well. For them, they provide the loans at an affordable rate to the electric vehicle drivers. And then we have another program with Women on Wheels. There's a company that's called Women on Wheels.
That's the one that excites me.
Yeah. So for them, they do the recruitment. They do the recruitment of riders because, like I said, there was such a huge number of people who wanted to join, but it was only a limited batch at first that we could do. So they go out, they seek, and initially when we started, it was targeted specifically for women because it is a scooter and it is different. And we wanted, like, the question you are asking is If it takes a regular lady, like she's been working elsewhere, I give her what she needs in terms of I give her training. I give her an electric motorcycle. I give her a phone to be using. I train her how to use all these tools. Will she be able to adapt to the entirely male-dominated industry? And the answer has been yes. So how we've done this, the next partner we have is two other partners. We have SafeBoda and we have Global. So SafeBoda does the training. SafeBoda, we use training facilities at SafeBoda. And then once the ladies graduate, they are issued with those the helmets and those safety jackets from SafeBoda. At the same time with Glovo, once the ladies have graduated, they're also given those things by Glovo. They've been generous enough, and then they start working. And the fact that so far we've been able to keep them for so long shows that the answer is actually yes.
How many are they?
It's a male-dominated. So right now we have 24.
24 women.
No, 16 plus. Yeah.
Might you know any of their stories in your head that you can share with us that shows this picture that you're painting?
Yeah. Actually, I can think of two.
Okay.
We had one lady who was going through a very nasty divorce, with her husband, and been in and out of courts for so long. And one of the arguments that was being made is that the children now need to go with the husband because for her she's not financially able to support the kids. And so she was making the case, no, actually I can. So when we brought her to the Green Hub project, she was actually able to show, because you see, at the same time when you're trying to get custody of your children, you need to show that you
can provide for them.
Yeah, you can provide for them. So for her, she says that bike gave her the freedom she needed, and she was able to finalize her divorce and also keep custody of her children.
When you talk about a woman that's now able to take care of her children from this business, it's making me wonder about the average daily financial returns for them, typically.
Yeah. So the two platforms, so we have those that are working on Glovo, we have those that are working on SafeBoda. Most of them do both, but some are specialized. You have someone who tells you, I don't like dealing with passengers, so I'll just do Glovo and do deliveries.
Food doesn't talk.
Yeah, exactly. Another one is like, I don't like doing deliveries because sometimes there are also problems associated with that. The pay per kilometer is low. While there is another person who will tell you, like, I don't like both because I hate using my phone and it dies every time, so I can't use the app. So we've seen those three camps. So in terms of earnings, I think we have seen people on Glovo who are earning at least 200,000 per week. So when you multiply that to about 4 weeks, you're seeing earnings of about 800,000 to 1 million. And remember that, number one, they're not paying anything in petrol costs, right? Because that is covered under the Green Hub cost. So by the end of the day, just on the revenue side, you're seeing people who are making up to 1 million. And that is rather encouraging for someone who wasn't earning much.
Are you seeing any particular challenges for women that are specific to them?
Yeah, there are problems that are very specific women, and some of them are they are both societal. And the biggest societal one we had initially when we were starting off is rejection, especially when you are doing the boda-boda. You find that there are those customers who've ordered a SafeBoda, and the minute they pick and they hear it's a female voice, they just cancel without even telling them why they're canceling. I'm canceling you just because you're a woman, and can be discouraging, especially if you're just starting off. You still haven't fully understood.
It's really sad. I would take a female boda rider any day.
No, you'd think so. So we went into this thinking. Actually, I have to say it's a bit sad, but the experience you're getting from them is that some of the most they get rejected more by other women and girls than so that's what I'm saying. It's a societal thing. The rejection is definitely the first part. So some of them actually prefer not to take the call, but just text. I'll come for you. When the person tried to call, I'm like, I can't talk, let me just come. And then she arrives there and she's like, okay, just take the ride. This is one of our riders, and and I was really impressed with her. She says she doesn't pick calls; she texts back such that they don't hear her voice. And when she gets there, she's like, "Okay, I'm your ride. I know you're afraid, but here's the case: I'll drive you, and when we get to the destination, you decide if you pay me or not." And yeah, so far no one has ever refused to pay. It's such a daring, because now you have to ask yourself, it's either a free ride or with this woman. So that's one of the ways they've been able. But now, because we've pushed so much, people are actually used to them, so it's no longer a big deal. But when we were starting off, that was the biggest one. So most people who end up taking those rides, you see those comments on Twitter, like today I took a woman rider in Toso. Number one, the vehicle is very silent, so there is no vibration. So the appeal of the vehicle itself is number one, and also the driver themselves, that positive feedback as is giving. We've actually seen that on our own end. The women tend to have less accidents, less police incidents, because you rarely find them like passing the wrong side of the road.
Yeah.
You always see it's the guys who are doing that. So if someone is getting arrested, it's most probably a guy. And that's just the thing. I think they're a safer driver from that point of view. And people who are used to them, actually, that's the feedback they give. But even if you've never tried, you might think, she might not be like competent on the road or something. Yeah. So, yeah, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
I constantly have to remind myself this conversation is very interesting, and I keep forgetting to bring it back to the climate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
part of it. How do your electric motorbikes contribute to reducing carbon emissions and promoting sustainable transportation? Not just in Uganda. Think about Kenya, and where else do you operate?
Yeah. Just Kenya and Uganda.
Okay.
So from a climate point of view, I think Uganda is actually the best place to be in from electricity generation point of view. Like over 90% of the electricity we have in Uganda is generated from renewable sources. Mainly, we thank God for the Nile. Yeah, So
Let's be kind to it.
yeah, let's be kind to it, exactly. And so we have a lot of generation. So number one, the fact that you don't have any tailpipe emission means you reduce you have basically eliminated any tailpipe emission from moving from petrol to electric. Remember, the bikes we get in Africa, they're not sold anywhere else. Like the Boxer you see here in Kampala, it's very specific to Africa. And the reason that is the case is that we have lax rules when it comes to emissions. The vehicles, the motorcycles that we have, regular boda-boda, still use 1980s and 1970s technology, which is just a carburetor and no control for emissions. Okay, so these vehicles, not only do they produce very high CO2 emission per kilometer per unit of petrol burned, because of that technology I'm saying, it's very fuel inefficient. And number two, we also have, because it runs hot, because it's also air cooled, you also get high NOx emissions. And that's part of the reason they're not sold here. There was some time back in India when all those vehicles, there was a crackdown where all those bikes that have that old technology, that don't have new emission, don't comply to emission standards, they were all taken outside the road. So even right now when you go to India, you'll never find a Boxer Bajaj 100 that looks exactly like what we have in Africa because of that thing. So that tells you per unit of fuel we burn already, we're producing so much CO2. So changing that from ICE from petrol burning to electricity means already you have a gain there. And remember I said the point of renewable energy. We have capacity to generate more renewable energy in Uganda as a country. But the question has always become where will that demand come from? If we were to look at it from a point of view, if we were to change every motorcycle in Kampala to electric, that's already enough. That is demand enough that you can say it's equivalent to the whole of Kampala again. So that's very high demand, and that will mean that our generation at our dams, all that demand will be taken by renewable energy. And number one, electricity will be we'll have a less. You know how much amount we spend in currency, in foreign exchange currency, just buying fuel from other countries, because we don't control the fuel. If there's a problem in the Gulf states, or if there is a problem with the like wars, etc., or petrol actually spikes.
Yeah.
And once that happens, everything else like basically
Comes to a standstill.
Yeah. So if we can reduce our dependency, on foreign imported fuel, it's actually good for us from an economic point of view, because there'll be more consumption locally, saving us so much in forex. How much you spend in forex. So there's that push from that's the main advantage from a government point of view. Then as I said, also the environmental advantages, the trickle down. Tailpipe
emissions.
Tailpipe emissions. And then number two, even from like that is air pollution, but there is also the other aspect of noise pollution. Okay, so motorcycles are really loud. So I don't know if you sat next to like a place where there are like 100 motorcycles waiting for the light to turn green. And you hear
Ginger
them
Road.
Yes, exactly.
But there are those ones.
Yeah.
And then there are just these ones that have, what they call it, the ones where some random guy has that one particular bike.
Yeah, with some loud exhaust.
Yes.
Yeah. So with electric, you'll never have that. So that is the other thing I was talking about. You have reduced noise emission, because effectively the only noise you'll be getting is the whine of the motorcycle itself, the motor itself, and the wind noise when the vehicle is moving.
Now I'm thinking about the health benefits that would come with this.
Yes. So the health benefits, number one, immediate one. So you have reduced, with the reduced NOx and particulate emissions from moving from the petrol ones to electric. The immediate benefit for like us who live within the city is, number one, there'll be less pollution, and less pollution means I'll probably live to almost be as old as my grandfather. So I can't.
I'm doing other things right.
Yeah.
But yes, I've heard of a number of people the doctor's advice has been, you need to go up country and just get some fresh air.
Yes, move out of the city. It's mostly because, and also you're seeing the same even in children. Now you have children who have, the asthma rates in children are higher than what they were like 20, 30 years ago. So those are just some of the problems that are brought about by having so many vehicles, so many carbon burning vehicles within the city. And yeah, just moving directly from that to electric will at least reduce by that. I don't know the exact percentage. I'm sure like a company like GAZ has probably done that math. Yeah, but definitely that's something that has been seen. Just to give an example, when India moved from those vehicles, when they mandated that every new vehicle comes with that, with those new standards of emissions, there's actually some reduction in the smog within their cities, because they have very big cities. They have a motorcycle density that is even higher than what we have here. So just moving from a more polluting bike to a less polluting bike, the effects were seen from a city point of view. So now imagine moving from that to clearing it entirely. So you'll be seeing what we saw during the pandemic when they were not moving around.
Yeah. What's your strategy when you... we were talking a little bit about this earlier, but what's your strategy to make these electric motorbikes more accessible and appealing to the local population, especially the boda-boda riders?
Yes. So number one is what you can do today to make the cost lower. There's what government does for us already. They have given us tax incentives if you're locally manufacturing here.
Okay.
So bringing in as much local manufacturing, not only will it make the vehicle cheaper, but will also, that's job creation for, and a boost to the local economy. And so that's what everybody now is racing towards. Unfortunately, that takes time. Moving the whole manufacturing facility to local, it takes time. So it's in terms of percentages. The government has been very supportive of that. Last year we had a tax holiday where all electric vehicles, even 4-wheelers and 2-wheelers, all imported were basically getting import tax waived, and we were not paying import tax for that. So that lowered the price a bit for those vehicles. And then from this year, the import tax was reinstated, but only for fully built units. So everyone who's doing manufacturing here means the bike is cheaper. Number two, what you can do now boils down to looking at the industry as a whole. In the motorcycle industry, when you look at creditors, most motorcycles on the road that are sold new, they're usually sold on credit, right? So you go to a credit issuing company and you get the motorcycle and you pay like on a weekly or monthly fee. Now, unfortunately, because of the high default rates in the industry, the interest rates on those loans are usually very high. You have companies that are charging 70 or 80% annualized interest rate.
Wow.
Yes. So, yeah. You don't hear about that a lot, but it happens. So having a creditor like Centenary Bank, who are willing to offer those loans for a lower price, also contributes to lowering the price of the bike.
So you're very
even more.
choosy with your partners.
Yes, we're very choosy with our partners. So that's why we said there was a whole recruitment process because every company, every partner, there's something they want to see. Okay.
Felix, my last question, and I know we focused heavily on the bikes and not the cars. So maybe before I ask you my last question, tell me just a little bit about the electric cars. What's that looking like in Uganda?
Electric cars. So in Uganda, maybe we start with the history of electric cars in Uganda and East Africa in general. The first electric vehicle, the first that at least I know and it's widely written about, it was actually in Kenya in 2016. That's a vehicle I actually took to my village. So actually the first car in Kenya. So that was a Nissan Leaf. So and it was a used vehicle in Japan. So the vehicles that we had initially by then they were mostly used vehicles. The same thing we see here. Like 90% of the vehicles that are imported aren't actually new, but are used vehicles from Japan.
Yeah.
So what that means is that the rate of adoption of electric vehicles is mostly dependent on the vehicles we can find, vehicles that we can find in a country like Japan. Now, Japan has been one among the countries that is lagging when it comes to adopting electric vehicles. And you can actually see that here. We have very limited numbers of used electric vehicles. Now, I can argue that's actually a good thing that we don't have many of those because we want to bring in new vehicles. And when it comes to new vehicles, actually the one company that has been on the forefront is Nissan Motor Kia through Kia Group. Now, Kia Group, as you can see, they're already investing in electric bikes. They started bringing in electric vehicles right now. So almost every electric vehicle you'll see, almost, not all, is either a Nissan, a Ford Mustang, or a Hyundai. So they have a number of vehicles in Uganda. Now, the problem with those is that the adoption hasn't been as big as we had hoped, mostly because of cost. Because when you look at an average ICE, an average petrol car and an average electric car, the electric car would be about 20 to 30% more expensive for the same vehicle. So there's a cost element. In Uganda, in Africa in general, we are very price, we're very price sensitive. So the adoption of electric cars is mostly hindered on cost. But once the cost comes down and the ranges go up, I think we'll see mass adoption. And this is more to do with the government. Yeah. You've heard about the Chira Motor.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so they are doing really big, and for them, they've taken the same approach we have. They've said on the four-wheelers, what is most likely to sell in numbers and what we need mostly to focus on. The average Ugandan doesn't have a car. So what do they need? They need public mass transport. And they've been doing buses, and oh my goodness, those buses are beautiful, right? So it's actually made in Uganda. So on the adoption of the four-wheelers, I actually see the commercial side driving the industry first, where we'll have the buses from Chira and probably trucks afterwards, because it's something they've talked about. And then now you'll see like everyone else in the four-wheeler, because when it becomes more expensive to fuel your vehicle and you hear like your neighbor is saving 50% on fuel, it's a monkey see monkey do. So you'll probably jump on your electric vehicle immediately as well. That's what we'll see.
What infrastructure and policy support do you think we need to scale the adoption of electric vehicles, electric cars and motorbikes across, Uganda. Outside the region, but let me say Uganda?
Yeah.
And how is KinHub in any way addressing this?
Yes. So over the last few years, actually, Uganda has been very progressive when it comes to pushing the agenda of electric vehicles. Like I said, the initiative of the tax holiday. And also we have the tax waivers for local assembly, and also encouraging like investing in the Chira Motors. So those are the ones, at least on the fiscal side, that actually make a difference. Now, on the policy side, we also...
Let's start with the infrastructure side.
Okay. On the infrastructure, number one is reliable electricity. So we have we have what we call the Uganda Electric Mobility Association. Green Hub is part of that, and we are in consortium with the government and government agencies such as the STI, which is the Science and Technology Institute. We also have like Muchiri University. We have the Electricity Regulatory Authority (ERA). So I usually engage with them just to set up things such as standards. Like we just had a meeting last Friday to review the standards that we want to adopt for 2025. So the government has been very supportive in that part, like listening to what the industry wants, because they don't want to come up with policy that actually stops or blocks innovation. So what we are looking at in future, what we have now is that if you're setting up an electric vehicle charging station, that charging station, there are tax benefits you're getting from that. So on the infrastructure side, and now we have the ERA, the Electricity Regulatory Authority, now looking at companies such as Umeme and telling them, for example, from the feedback we are getting from the electric mobility players, is that within this area, we need to invest more in electricity. We need to invest more in the distribution and generation, the distribution of electricity. We're having blackouts in this area. We need like a tariff, for example. We're also pushing for an electric mobility tariff. That is yet to happen, but the government is very open to that. So in terms of infrastructure, there's a lot of both public investment and private investment. The public investment part, because you're taking money from the Ugandan taxpayer, it needs to be well understood, and it needs to be scrutinized. And that's why the government, they take their time, but in most cases, it's because of that whole place where you don't want to incentivize one thing and at the expense of another. Then on the private side, we have companies such as Total Energies, one of our partners, who are actually setting up the charging stations. Now, the charging stations, you look at, for example, how much energy that station needs, and if the incoming energy from that particular area, the company such as Umeme has a capacity at which, if you go beyond that, means that you'll need a separate installation. So Umeme is actually open to upgrading such kind of stations under the direction of ERA. So it's both a private and a public thing, but the fact that it's a push and pull means we just have to get there gradually. So in my timeline, I'm looking at between 5 to 7 years till you see like mass adoption, when you'll be having charging stations along major highways. And the fact that all our neighbors are doing it, we have in Kenya that's also doing the same. We have in Rwanda that's also doing the same. And we know that what happens in Rwanda trickles into Uganda and trickles into Kenya in terms of infrastructure. Yeah. So that's what we are hoping, that also the cross-border, because I look at a time where I'll be able to drive from Kampala, maybe all the way to Mombasa, on electric. So I'd say that's at least 7 years.
Thank you, Felix, for sharing these incredible insights about, your journey and also Green Hub East Africa's approach to sustainable transportation. And thank you to our listeners. If you want to learn more about Green Hub East Africa or explore how you can be part of this green revolution, where do they find you?
Yes, we are in the socials. You can find us on LinkedIn. So the Green Hub East Africa Limited on LinkedIn. We're also on Facebook, Green Hub East Africa, and LinkedIn as well. Instagram, I mean.
Thank you so much, Felix. Once again, this has been really, really eye-opening for me. And again, to our listeners, thank you. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends.